But now we got to preview the Indiana-Washington game. This is a huge game for IU because game day is there. College game day is going to be in Bloomington, Indiana for only the second time ever. They were at the Ohio State game back in 2017 during week 1, and Indiana, outside of the first half, pretty much got destroyed in that game by the Buckeyes. But now Indiana's the team that is favored to win, and you see right here on Twitter, come early, be loud, and wear red. They're having a red out, which some people were laughing, saying it should have been a crimson out, but I guess red out just kind of sounds a little bit better. The white out's the best. That sounds the best. And, I mean, Indiana could technically do a white out, but their colors are more cream and crimson, so that would kind of complicate things. But you got the red out with a sellout crowd, second consecutive sellout, and Indiana's already sold out the Michigan and Purdue games as well at home. So Indiana sellouts the rest of the season. You're going to have to go on a secondary market if you want to attend these games. These games are already all sold out, which shows you how much interest there is in Indiana football right now, which is so awesome to see. But Indiana, in this game against Washington, they are favored by around 6.5 right now. And before Rourke's injury news, they were favored by 10. So Indiana was a pretty significant favorite against the Washington Huskies before the news that Rourke was not going to play in this game. So they've dropped it to 6.5. And I don't blame the odds for dropping, because I am more nervous about Indiana winning this game than I was before. Washington, though, has taken a significant step back. They're 4-3 on the year. And last year, we know that they made it all the way to the playoff and made the national championship game. They had a fantastic season, awesome season for Washington. But unfortunately, this year, they lost Kalen DeBoer to Alabama. They lost Michael Penix to the draft. They lost Roma Dunze. They lost a lot of their team. And now they have Jed Fish, who I think is a good coach. I think Jed Fish is going to do great things there. And he's done enough there so far to give Washington fans hope that, they're not going to be bad. They're not going to take a complete step off a cliff. Kind of like Florida State from last year to this year. Florida State's completely fallen off a cliff. Washington's still competitive. They're still playing all right football. But Indiana, definitely people are a little bit worried about them with the injury news, with definitely Curtis Rourke, Taven Jackson having to come in. So that has dampened people's, hopes that Indiana could just roll in this game like they did against Nebraska, which nobody was expecting to do that. So I don't really know why anybody would expect it in this game. Obviously, coming off that Nebraska game, you're like, well, if they beat him by that much, they could beat Washington by this much. But we'll have to see. Like I said, game day is there. And we've known when game day goes to places, sometimes teams struggle and they don't play that well because of the hype. I don't think Cignetti's going to let that happen, though, because of the fact that you have a disciplined team, because of a disciplined coach. Didn't let the big noon kickoff get to him. I don't think they're going to let game day get to him either. Plus, the other thing is, a lot of people said that Nebraska, they were going to buy up a lot of the tickets, and it's going to be like a half Nebraska crowd. Well, that didn't happen. Indiana bought all those tickets. It's just Washington's not having a great year. Washington's not going to travel. Those fans, there's not going to be many of them there. There's not going to be a lot of people making the trip from Washington all the way to Indiana. Plus, the other thing that hurts Washington in this game, it's a noon kickoff. Indiana's been getting noon kickoffs like all year. So it's a noon kickoff, and Washington has had issues playing at noon. Going to, the eastern part of the country, playing at noon, it messes with their, the time zone for players. That's a very tough thing to have to deal with, which we knew when they did that, adding these Pac-12 teams to the Big Ten. They knew that was going to happen, but they wanted that Big Ten money. That makes sense. Absolutely a good move, but it hurts these players having to travel. But I don't think Washington's fans, there's not going to be a lot of them there. So Indiana's crowd is going to make a big impact in this game. And Washington having to travel that far, and it's in the morning, that's an issue. Plus, when you look at Washington's schedule, they have lost to Rutgers and Iowa in the Big Ten so far. Both of those games were on the road. They lost both of those road games in the Big Ten. They lost to Washington State out of conference. They've beaten Northwestern, and they've beaten Michigan so far in the Big Ten, which a lot of people are going to be like, well, Michigan's not good this year. And number two, it was at Washington at night. And Washington's got a great home atmosphere at night. And they beat Northwestern at home as well. So, and I think that was a night game too. So if this game was at Washington and there's no Curtis Rourke, oh boy, there will be some problems. There's a decent chance Washington would be favored in that scenario. Husky Stadium is one of the most underrated environments in college football. Arguably, according to some, it had the highest decibel rating ever in college football history, which I don't know if that's true or not, but all I know is it's a very loud crowd. Very loud crowd. You do not mess with Husky Stadium, but don't have to worry about that. Game's at Indiana, so Washington's going to have to deal with Indiana's fans. Now, taking out all the superlatives to, all the extra stuff with the fans and the time of the game and college game day and all that, look at both teams. You got Washington. How are they doing as a team? Will Rogers, his stats are good. 1,800 yards, 13 touchdowns, 2 picks. He's having a good season for the Washington Huskies. It definitely is a good quarterback. People were starting to say he wasn't good after the unfortunate passing of Mike Leach, and he was struggling in the Mississippi State offense. He's not a bad quarterback. It's just because Mississippi State was really bad last year. But he's solid, and he's having good success at Washington. And he's not the reason they're losing games. And then when you look at the fact, Jonah Coleman, their top back, this is something that Washington differs from Indiana, is that they have a star back in Jonah Coleman, whereas Indiana's got like a four-headed monster running back. Washington just has their main feature guy, and then the other guys don't carry that much. But Coleman, he's got 5 touchdowns on the ground. They don't have a lot of rushing touchdowns, which is interesting. Definitely more passing touchdowns, but still Washington overall, not a bad rushing attack. Giles Jackson, he was a good receiver for them last year. He's solid. Jeremiah Hunter's a decent receiver. Denzel Boston's their secondary guy. They got good weapons on the outside. Denzel Boston with 9 touchdowns compared to Giles Jackson's 2. So Washington's offense, you're like, it's not that bad, but they have struggled on offense some. Like against Rutgers, they only had 18 points. Now, Rutgers supposedly has a good defense, but Rutgers has been falling off a cliff after they beat Washington. So really don't know what to make of that. I mean, looking at Washington overall, those 2 road losses do concern me for them. That they see Rutgers, especially now that Rutgers is really struggling, you should have won that game. If you're Washington, you should have beat Rutgers. And beating Michigan at home, every week that win's looking less impressive. So do I think Washington's a bad team? No, I don't. Definitely not a bad team. They are solid. They got some good players, but their defense just isn't, up there as one of the best in college football. It's not. And with Indiana's potent offense, that's going to be a problem for Washington. They're going to have to find a way to be able to slow down Indiana's offense, and they're going to have to be able to keep this a lower scoring game. That is the key for Washington to have success, because you saw against Nebraska, a lot of people were saying, even Nebraska fans, that their key to success was getting ahead of Indiana and taking the crowd out of it, getting up 14-0, 14-3, something like that, and then just try to hold the lead. That's how you win on the road. You have to strike first. You can't get behind, because if you do, you're going to end up losing. Well, if that happens in this game where Indiana starts blowing out Washington like they did against Nebraska, this game's over. Washington's going to have to strike first, take the lead first, and see if they can get like a 14-3 lead, 21-10 type of lead, and then hold it. That's their key to success. I just feel like Washington's defense is going to have to slow down Indiana's offense. And it might be a little bit easier that you don't have Curtis Rourke. That's going to help. Curtis Rourke not being in the game is going to make Indiana's offense worse. I know it will. I just don't see Indiana being as potent on offense, even though Taven Jackson was good in the second half. But still, I do think Indiana is going to have a good offensive performance in the game, and Washington is going to have to find a way to be able to slow them down, or they're going to fall behind, because Indiana's defense has been playing a whole lot better, and Washington's offense, while good, it's more of a short game attack. They don't go over the top much, and that's a problem, because Indiana definitely is a very, very, very solid team on being able to stop teams from going over the top on defense. They like to have a lot of stuff being short, and that's what Nebraska basically did all game. They were just doing a bunch of dump-off passes, short passes. It didn't work. Indiana snuffed it all game long, didn't allow anything to go for over the top, and that's what led to the blowout.